Yes, we are live now, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Pete. So can I welcome everybody to this meeting of the Finance and Major Contracts Committee. It's obviously being held remotely. Members in attendance this afternoon, myself, Councillor Richard Jackson as the Chair, Councillor John Ogle and Councillor Roger Jackson as Vice Chairs. We then have Councillor John Clark, Keith Girling, Tom Hollis, Eric Kerry, Diana Meal, Mike Pringle, Alan Rhodes and Gordon Wheeler in attendance, along with officers who will introduce during the course of the meeting. I'll move on to the minutes of the last meeting. I'll formally move those.
Second them, Chairman.
Thank you, John. Can I take those as correct? Yeah, okay, we'll take that. Thank you. So item 2 is apologies for absence. I don't think, Pete, we have any. Is that correct?
No, correct. We've had no apologies for absence, Chair.
Thank you. And so item 3 is declaration of interest. Are there any members or officers present that have interest to declare in any agenda items? I'm not seeing any. So we'll move on to item 4. I'll ask Nigel Stevenson, who's the Section 151 officer, to introduce the report. Nigel.
Thank you, Chairman, and apologies, colleagues, if you've had a few difficulties in joining the meeting with some ICT solutions, but I'm sure colleagues in ICT have been providing sufficient support. If I may, Chairman, Table 1 on page 4 indicates then that the forecast underspend for the overall County Council's outturn looks like to be 12.3 million as at period 11. And this is despite as the Council continues to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Significant variances are reported on a number of committees which are set out in the report, and I wasn't going to go into those in great detail. There have been 2 additional contingency requests for the new financial year since the last committee met. They are set out in paragraph 24 and paragraph 25. One from the Policy Committee for 430,000 to support major projects work, and another for 270,000 for the revised transformation model. Moving swiftly onto the capital programme, Table 3 on page 8 sets out anticipated slippage on the programme of 14.9 million. Again, the variances and the request for carry forward of provisions are set out in the report. The most significant variances in there is around the school's placements and improvement programmes, the library's ICT programme, investing in Nottinghamshire, digital connectivity and some building works programmes. The report also updates members on Treasury management activity for the period. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Are there any questions or comments on the report? Councillor Pringle, Mike.
Thanks, Chairman. And just to really recognise paragraph 11 with the uncertainty of future long-term programming, I think we all recognise the efforts that's happened during the COVID crisis, and I'm sure we'd all appreciate a longer term basis on being able to project future service provision if that's possible. Fingers crossed things will uptake and we get that sort of response. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Mike. Anybody else, any questions or comments on the report? If not, I don't think I moved it, so I'll formally move the recommendation.
Formally second, Chairman.
Thank you, John. And do we need to go through a name vote, Pete?
No, if you could just ask for if anyone's got any objections or any abstentions.
Okay, we'll do that. Is there anyone against or abstaining? In that case, can I take everyone who's for the recommendation? Okay, thank you. So that's carried. Thank you for that. Item 5 then is the school buildings improvement programme, latest estimated costs. And I think Phil, you're going to take us through this, Phil.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon. This report presents the latest estimated costs of the 21-22 school building improvement programme. Following previous reports, Children's and Young People's Committee establishing the projects to take to feasibility stage, projects across various work streams of the programme. Now the feasibility stage is complete, this report provides the estimated costs to proceed with the selected projects to construction phase. The cost of the project falls within the anticipated funding available from the school condition allocation we received from the DFE. However, the final confirmation of the figure is still pending. We expect that notification imminently, and if that is very different to what is expected, a further report will be brought to committee to vary the programme accordingly. So today we are seeking approval to take these projects to the construction phase based on these estimated costs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a regular report that we've seen before. I'll take it in two parts, if you like. So the report itself, and then I'll ask if there's any questions on the appendix after that. I can see Councillor Pringle, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. We will be supporting the report anyway. But Phil, I can't say anywhere with professional fees what sort of indemnity that carries with them for those professionals making decisions if there's changes. Is that part and parcel of it? Any contract at all that we have with these people at all?
Yes, that's covered fully in the cost that the indemnity is there. Should there be any changes to the programme or the projects themselves?
Sorry, Phil, if I can, is it full indemnity or is it part indemnity? Because I wasn't quite clear on that. Sorry.
The design works is full indemnity from our partnership, and the construction works are insured generally under the council's works in progress insurance.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. You happy with that, Mike? Councillor Clark, John.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm just asking to see there we've got a list boiler and heating pipework replacement, and bearing in mind that 2025 is it when we're not supposed to use gas boilers. Have we taken that in hand in case it might be the time for us on boiler replacement to look at heat source pumps? Thank you.
Yes, very much so. In all of the feasibilities we do regarding heating systems, we look at alternative to gas, whether that be renewable heat sources such as air source or water source heat pumps, and we'll consider alternatives before only resorting to gas if there is no other options available at that particular site.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. And I've got Councillor Roger Jackson now. Roger.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Well, my first question was similar to John's actually about whether we're doing alternative source of heating. But I do question some of the costs of the boiler replacement as well. They do vary a lot. If you look down the list, from up to about 17,000 to 800,000. So I just sort of wondered how we got such figures just for boilers. I mean, it's cheaper to put a roof on the school and to replace the boiler.
It does vary very much from one site to another, so often depending on the size of the school. It doesn't break down in the report whether it's the boiler for the full site or for part of the site. And obviously sometimes it's very straightforward. It's the boiler itself. Sometimes it's the ancillary systems, including pumps, distribution networks, and sometimes it's the whole heating system. So rest assured, it's a robust cost for the work that is being done, and that does vary significantly from one site to another, which is also true for some of the roofing one. You'll see variations. Sometimes it's just part of the roof. Sometimes it's the whole school that we're talking about.
Okay, thank you. I know. I just felt that some of the costs were quite extravagant, for the heating system. But probably because retrofitting doesn't help either.
No, indeed.
It might be something future committee wants to look at, whether we do a bit of a dive into one or two of these, just because we need to obviously satisfy ourselves with getting value for money out of this and that we're doing work that's necessary. So perhaps it's something, whoever this committee is next month and onwards might want to take a closer look at some of that. Derek, did you want to come in on that point before I bring Alan Rhodes in?
Yes, just to follow up on what Phil said, I think one of the issues perhaps that might be helpful, more helpful to members, is for us to describe things and perhaps a little bit more accurately, because what Phil described there are one set of boiler works can be very different from another set of boiler works. A straight strip out and a replacement of a boiler is one thing, it's a self-contained piece of work. When we're actually repiping an entire primary school, and that primary school, for example, might be a former secondary school, so it will operate from a number of buildings potentially across more than one site. It's a fundamentally different piece of work than the straight boiler replacement. And perhaps we need to be a bit cuter in describing some of those works in the appendices that we provide to members, so you can get a better sense at a committee of the scope of the works that we're actually doing, because there's a direct relationship between the scope of the work and the cost. A small boiler in a small primary is one thing. An entire repiping of a school is something else entirely, and perhaps we need to articulate that a little bit more clearly in the future.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I'm sure we're not replacing the whole roof at Everton Primary, as the appendix says, for £15,000. If we are, that's a great job. But okay, Councillor Rhodes, Alan Rhodes.
Yes, thanks, Richard. Derek's suggestion just then was very helpful. I mean, it's incumbent on this committee to satisfy ourselves that we're getting value for money and that the costs we're presented with are reasonable and you know, in conjunction with what we'd expect. So yeah, I picked up Roger's point actually about some of these costs. You know, just picking one up, Sutton-cum-Lound CFE is the job for replacement of boiler and associated systems over £1 million. That's a lot of money, and we do need to be assured. I think we've got a duty to ask these questions, that we're getting proper value for money, and these are costs that would stand up to scrutiny in any competitive market.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Thanks for that. I can't see anybody else indicating. Let me propose the recommendation, which is on page 24.
I'm happy to second, Chairman. Can I just ask a question before we get any further? I've already requested, actually. I requested details of the drainage works at North Wheatley, and I haven't got them. I've been waiting for quite a while for them. Is it possible to have a copy of those drainage works and the costs of them split down, please, Derek?
Certainly, Councillor Ogle, we can do that. I'm sure that's something you can pick up, Phil.
Yes, absolutely. We have the full feasibility report compiled now, so we can share that with Councillor Ogle.
So can I just ask you, I'm not quite clear on this Sutton-cum-Lound boiler and associated systems, what are we getting back on that? Can I just ask that before we finish?
That is a full feasibility for replacement of the entire heating system at the site, replacing the gas heating with air source heat pumps. So that requires full repiping, new heat emitters, and full boiler room replacement. So it's a very extensive project, hence the cost.
Can I trouble you for the little bit more information on that, so I can just look through it just to get an idea of what you're doing there? Is that possible, Derek?
Absolutely, we can provide that for you.
Thank you, Derek. Fine, Richard.
Okay, thank you. So it's been proposed and seconded. I'll do the same again then. I'll ask if anyone is against this item. I'm not seeing anybody. Does anyone wish to abstain? In that case, is everybody in favour? Okay, thank you. So that looks unanimous to me. So that's carried. Thanks very much, and thanks, Phil. Item 6 then is the commencement of first year of the Domestic Abuse Support Service. This is an item that committee asked to be put onto the work programme. You've had a chance to look to this. I'm going to ask Michael to introduce the report. Michael, is anything you need to add?
Thank you very much, Councillor Jackson. Michael Fowler, Category Manager for Adult Social Care. So just to summarise the procurement process, we established a framework agreement with 3 providers to deliver these services. That was the back end of 2019, and the call of contracts from those framework agreements commenced on the 1st of April 2020. And I have my colleague from Public Health will detail the call of contract detail. Thank you. Rebecca.
Thank you, and thank you committee for inviting me to share the findings of the first year. So the report provides a summary of the first year and it provides the advantages of the contracting arrangements. It also informs committee of additional duties the authority have received from MHCLG to deliver the domestic abuse duty. There are key points I would like to highlight before I'm happy to have any questions. We have seen an an unprecedented demand for domestic abuse services during the last year, and this has required creative approaches from all of our service providers, as well as from commissioners. The adaptability of providers has been outstanding, and a privilege to work alongside. We have continued to deliver they have continued to deliver most services remotely throughout 2021. The contracting arrangements have enabled this to happen by passporting additional funding and increasing staffing capacity and capabilities by enabling them to work remotely. The new domestic abuse duty focuses on support within safe accommodation. This is an additional requirement, and it provides further opportunity to bring together financing and oversight of domestic abuse under the leadership of upper tier local authorities. We are conducting a needs assessment, and this has been led by Public Health, and this will be shared with partners in April and June of this year. And this will help us to develop our local plans, and we will be taking the commissioning plan back to the Adult Social Care and Public Health Committee in July of this year, and we would be happy for this committee members to have sight of those documents if requested. I hope that gives you a flavour of the different things that have been taking place, but I welcome any questions.
Okay, thanks very much for that. I think that's a good suggestion. Part of the recommendation talks about any further actions that we might want as a committee, so I think we can certainly do it. I'll move the recommendation as it is.
Second, Chairman.
Thank you, John, and I'll open it up. I've got Councillor Alan Rose to start with. Alan?
Yes, thanks. Thanks again, Richard. Thank you for your presentation, Rebecca. Just looking at paragraph 18, it appears that virtual support, both for children and women, doesn't seem to be a particularly preferable option, and that both children and women have deferred the offer until group face-to-face is resumed. That's led to an expanding waiting list, which I suspect is exactly what you wanted to avoid when you offered the virtual support. Why do you think the virtual offer has been rejected?
Thank you. I think we have to recognise that when COVID started, nobody knew how long it would go on for. So initially, both women and children rejected those virtual offers because they assumed that face-to-face delivery would recommence sooner than it actually did. So I think as time has gone on, people have become more aware of the virtual offers and they've become more comfortable with virtual offers. So that's resulted in the acceptability of those offers becoming more mainstream within the way that we're all leading our lives at the moment. So I think that that's led to more people accepting it. It is preferable for face-to-face delivery. Therefore, we will resume face-to-face delivery as soon as possible, and it is already resuming with a number of our services. But there is a challenge around the amount of people that we can see face-to-face and the amount of people we can see remotely. So we are having to stage and manage that recommencement of face-to-face delivery. So it's a process that we have plans for, and we are working on as we move through the next few months and move back to face-to-face delivery. The issue over the waiting lists, we have put additional capacity with the support of additional funding that's come from the Ministry of Justice through our partnership with the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. So we have enabled as much additional capacity to be employed wherever possible, but these demands are ever changing. So we are having to move with the times and the demands and challenges that we face on monthly, weekly, and now yearly basis.
Okay,
Thank you.
Are you happy with that, Alan? I assume so. Okay, thank you. So I've got Councillor Neil. Diana next, please.
Thank you, Richard. Rebecca, thank you very much for this report and your explanation around it. I just have a couple of quick questions. One is, and the graph 1, it shows the take up of the free phone domestic and sexual violence abuse line in 2019 and 2020. And there's a clear, it increases quite a bit in January, February 2020, that's pre-COVID, and then there's a big blip upwards, sort of May to September last year, and it's calmed down a little bit. Is that because of a smaller demand, or is it because capacity to field those calls? Could be either, couldn't it? And then my other question is around the safe accommodation and the work that's being done. Is there any sort of sense in which you feel that women and children are not being able to get the secure accommodation that is required at the moment? So in other words, so what's happening to them? Is there sort of temporary accommodation they can be supported with, or is it purely that there's support in a different sort of a way? What I'm concerned about is obviously children and particular mothers not being able to get away from a perpetrator when they really need to, because there's no option for them. So really those two questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. I'll take them separately. So to take the first question around the helpline, the graph does show that there has been an increasing demand pre-COVID for the helpline. And that is partly a success, because the more we promote and the more people who use the helpline is enabling them to get support as quickly as possible. One of the things that we have implemented now is email support as well, and that can be allowing particularly professionals who require advice and support for survivors that they're supporting, that they're able to get that information more quickly and not take up helpline capacity. The points that you raised around the changing levels of use of the helpline, we have seen some of those changes relate to lockdown restrictions and changes. So as lockdown released, we did see an increase in the use of the helpline. Initially, there was a drop in April, and that was due to the movement of the helpline into a remote working model, where we moved it to be within people's homes. And through COVID additional monies, we have increased capacity in the helpline. So that has allowed us to be able to receive more calls during 2020. The levels of calls now are starting to level off, but we are mindful of what that will look like going forwards as we move through the new roadmap, and people may be requiring support in different ways over the next few months. Does that answer your questions on the helpline?
Yes, I was just curious why it's sort of kind of gone down at the end of the year, if there was any reason for that, or was it just maybe there was some pent up demand after the initial lockdown, and then that waned or leveled off later on?
I have to say I don't know in detail as to why that may be the case.
Yes, that's fine. That's fine. Yes, and the next
problem. So the next question around the safe accommodation. I think the questions that you're asking me are related to the need of domestic abuse survivors and their children. And one of the things that we're doing is a in-depth needs assessment to look at the offer that we already have in place for providing people with safe accommodation, which may include people staying within their own homes and making their own homes safer. So it's not always about people leaving, it's sometimes about them staying where they are and increasing the safety measures there. The needs assessment will look at what we already have, but also what need is presenting to us, both within our local domestic abuse services, but also within the district councils, within their homelessness services, because people will be identified as homeless. This piece of work is ongoing, and we will be having a number of sessions with stakeholders, which includes the district councils and other partners in May and June in order to understand that further. But that will help us to form our commissioning plan, which is what I have highlighted in the report. And I'm happy to bring that commissioning plan alongside the needs assessment back to committee members so that they can have a better oversight of what's being undertaken.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And I've got Councillor Pringle now, Mike.
Thanks, Chairman. Thanks, Rebecca. I'm just wondering, I mean, I think we'd all be horrified if for any reason we were missing any part of domestic violence through funding not being available, although we recognise that obviously the finances are in need of scrutiny to the penny across all committees now. I wondered if you'd had any sort of starting block as to what was expected from the funding and your continuation, recognising that there's obviously going to be a huge demand as expected through the COVID crisis. And secondly, Chairman, for you, we see that the results will probably go back to cash to the Ash Committee, and I know that Rebecca said she'd come back, but I think it will be important for us to come back with some detail of the results relative to the cash amounts that are going forward, and so we're aware if we need future investment. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mike. Rebecca, do you want to answer the first part of that, and then I can talk about the second?
Yes, thank you. So one of the things that we recognise is that there are some additional financial requirements. We have been fortunate in the fact that our services have adapted and delivered creatively through the last year. The challenges that we have is that we only have so much capacity. So as you rightly say, it's how do we increase that capacity? There have been opportunities nationally for additional funding to be provided to help us to deliver that. And then in the main, that funding has come down through the Ministry of Justice, therefore being passported to services from the OPCC's office. I think that we need to continue to monitor service demand, and I welcome any support with moving forwards, increasing our capacity if required. But it's at the moment for us to be still continuing to monitor demand, and particularly recognising that demand changes as we come out of lockdown, and we do not know at the moment what level of demand there is through the hidden violence that's been we know has been taking place in lockdown.
Okay, thanks for that. I mean, for my part, Mike, you know, the figure that's in the budget is based on unexpected demand just because we just have to have something in the budget, but it's not a service which is going to stop when it reaches that, if it were to reach that figure. We would always, and I'm sure we would always find extra resource to make sure that we can put extra capacity in if it's needed. I just want to make sure as a committee going forward, whoever is the new committee and the new council has got good sight of how the budget is bearing up, and you know we can have some good forewarning if we're going to need to increase the budget in line with demand. I mean, we all hope that demand won't increase as that much, but I think there's a bit of an expectation, sadly, that it will. So some mechanism that we can be satisfied that we'll know if we're looking like this is an area that's going to need more resource.
Thanks, Chairman. I think we're all on the same page.
And of course, knowing in advance would give us the chance to lobby for extra resource from central government, because we have been quite well funded in terms of extra resource as it's been needed right through the pandemic. So I think if we can see demand and we can demonstrate it and prove that to central government, then we can be asking for that sort of extra resource rather than as a knee-jerk reaction suddenly having to find cash if we reached our budget. Rebecca, you wanted to come back?
Yes, just very quickly to say that one of the things that I think we have in our favour within Nottinghamshire is that we do work very well in partnership. And the new funding that's coming down from the domestic abuse duty clearly is looking at supporting people within safe accommodation, but that can be within people's own homes. So I think what we're looking at is how we use the money that we're getting from government to not duplicate, but actually to ensure that we are expanding our support services appropriately so that it's meeting the needs of survivors, both male and female survivors and their children. And I think that's the real benefit of the way that we work within Nottinghamshire, and hopefully that should ensure that we can meet more the demand of more survivors going forwards and use our money appropriately.
Okay, thanks for that. That is reassuring. I'm not seeing anybody else wanting to come in which case, as it's been moved and seconded, can I take the vote in the same way again? Is anybody against or wanting to abstain on this report? I don't see anybody, so is everybody in favour of the report? Okay, and that is unanimous. And we'll pass on, Rebecca, please, our thanks for the work that you're doing in managing this unpredictable demand at the moment. So thank you for that. The next item, which is the final item, is the work programme. I mean, this is slightly academic, I think, because there will be a new committee with some new faces, if not all new faces on it, and they will have their own ideas what they want to put on their work programme, but we need a starting point. So I don't see anybody looking to speak on this. If I can just take the opportunity then to, as it is our last council meeting, to thank everybody for their input, and well, I think it's been a good working committee actually, with a good atmosphere. I think we've all got on well. We've had our differences, but I think we've been very constructive as a committee. Can I also thank Nigel, and through Nigel, the whole of the finance team in real, exceptional circumstances is an overused phrase, isn't it? But in really exceptional times, not only have a lot of your officers and yourself, Nigel, picked up considerable additional work to get us through the pandemic and support the county as well as the council. The day job has got done as well, and I think that is quite remarkable, actually. And I thank Pete, who's looked after us for the whole of the 4 years, and everybody else that has looked after the functioning of the committee. But it's been a pleasure to work with all of you. And on a personal level, I wish everybody well for next May. On a political level, perhaps not everybody. But Mike, you've indicated to speak.
Just to reiterate, on a political level, not everybody, but stay safe at least. But certainly to share our thanks with Nigel and his team, as you've said, Chairman, but also to recognise, the fact that I think it has been a buoyant committee. I think we have been able to debate with each other in proper political debate, and be resolute in our scrutiny with things that have come forward. So applaud you and your chairman, and all the members, in fact, for 4 years. And hopefully, if there is any change, that the committee continues in that vein. Thank you, Chairman.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. I don't see anybody else. I do see somebody else wishing to speak, but I can't see who it is. It's Tom, Councillor Hollis. Tom.
No, yeah, just Councillor, just to really thank you for being a fair chairman during the time. I think I've certainly, from the Ashfield Independent perspective, found you very fair with us during the time on this committee, and exactly in the same vein with yourself and Councillor Pringle, to thank Nigel and his staff for not only providing us with comprehensive answers in these meetings, but also a lot of the background and time with us outside the committee, which we certainly don't take for granted. So it's a shame, obviously, this is not only the last virtual meeting of the Finance and Property Committee, but also the last meeting of this committee itself, personnel-wise. So I think it's been certainly a good debate, and something that the community of Nottinghamshire should be quite proud of. Really, I think it's been one of the best committees I think on the council really for debate wise, and I thank you, Chairman, for allowing that to take place.
Thank you. Okay, thanks all very much indeed. Then once again, and if there's nobody else to speak, I shall close the meeting.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Stay